Hello everyone, welcome back to the third track of the API Days Dubai. We have a really interesting session in the next upcoming minutes to understand about the API security. API security is one of the critical point that today's leader is facing. Developers are trying to understand that how they can, resolve it. And we have the William and May with us. Hey William.
Hi,
Hi
Shreya.
May. Welcome to the
Hi,
stage.
Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Yeah, we are super excited to understand how we can, deal with the API security. Yeah. So stage is all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Shreya. And APIs are really the building blocks of all the digital business. And we have been hearing this again and again from the morning sessions. So today we are just looking at the other side. So, how do we really go ahead and secure the APIs and hence improve the API security posture? So, today, May and I will unpack few of the security challenges that we faced in securing a B2B marketplace, which is TEXUB, and a digital bank, which is VO, and represented by my friend May here. And as we move forward, a little bit background about TechSub. So TechSub is a leading B2B marketplace, mainly for the IT and mobility products, and it's completely a cloud native application, and it's powered by an APIs, and APIs are really at the front end of the business, and securing them, keeping them safe, stable, and seamless is my job. Over to you, May.
Okay, so thank you, William. Thank you, API Days. Let's talk about WEO. So, WEO has just been launched a couple of months ago. It's a new approach to banking. It's a completely digital bank lo- focused on the UAE market. We are based in Abu Dhabi. And when we're talking about banking today, we're talking about far beyond just banking. Our main focus at WEO is delivering great banking capabilities to businesses. We're talking from freelancers to small businesses to medium enterprises, etc. And we're doing that with fast and easy banking, with beyond banking capabilities like integrated CRM, invoicing, etc., and a lot of automations. So basically, we want to be a one-stop shop for a business owner looking to digitalize their business. Now, doing that obviously requires a lot of APIs. We haven't developed everything on our own, goes without saying. So we have dozens of APIs, and it's my unfortunate job to secure them. Or actually, very fortunate. I do like that. But it is definitely a challenge securing APIs, and we're going to talk about that today.
Sure. And quickly moving into the analysis, just to give you a background. So Gartner predicts API is to be the most vulnerable in the years to come, and 2022 is the year of API attack. As we clearly see that the threat vector has moved away from the web applications more to the API, as API carries a lot of sensitive data as well as the application logic. It is a easy task for or a target for the hackers, and it results in both a financial fraud or even in the loss of customers. So hence it is a paramount importance as a CISO to keep the APIs intact and secure. And the rest of the analyst community also amplify the same thoughts, and we have most of the analysts agreeing to Gartner and have their own verdicts. So it's available on the public domain for you to go through. Quickly moving on to some of the recent attacks, there are umpteen number of attacks and examples that we see, and we read about it almost on a daily basis. But few of them which I picked up, there's an interesting view where the hackers have exploited the business logic vulnerabilities of most of these organizations to get into an organization and steal either data or commit a financial fraud. So it's very much real, and whether you are a small startup or an established player or a large company, it doesn't really matter. We are all reeling under the threat of API security vulnerabilities and issues. So some of the challenges which we faced, we have tried to articulate some of them. Some of them are key, and we will take one by one and then probably give a view on this. So one of the major challenge or the job of a CISO is to ensure that the applications and APIs are protected from in real time and from all the threats and vulnerabilities, and which are typically the challenge comes in where it's not mitigated by traditional firewalls. It could be even a more intelligent WAFs that we see in the market, or to more of an extent about API gateways, because API gateways provide a lot of functionality, and people, at least I was under the impression that security is something that is already taken care by the API gateways, and that seems to be an issue for us. And we did a quick comparison of taking some of the API top threats and then see how it was mitigated by WAFs and API gateways. So, long story short, most of them fell flat, and we were actually looking at a real gap in the API security posture. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I think that for us, the biggest challenge as a bank that, as I mentioned, is using dozens of APIs is first of all having a full inventory and understanding where we're vulnerable, what sort of APIs we have, what sort of data is being transferred from us to a third party or from a third party back to us. How is that connectivity created? Because we know in the last year, just to make a long story short, I can give you three examples that is LinkedIn, Parallel, and Clubhouse. All three of them had major breaches resulting from API misconfiguration, basically. It's not really misconfiguration. It was because all of these companies have not ensured that all of their APIs require proper authentication. Now, for me, when I started off at the bank, one of the biggest challenges, and it's not just with APIs, but with anything, but specifically APIs, I think is even more so, is creating the inventory. Is understanding that we're responsible as a bank. I'm responsible for all of the customer data, for everything. It doesn't matter whether I do it myself or I use a third party, an API. And for me, it was the biggest challenge to try and understand what sort of APIs we have, what are the functionalities, and what is the security posture that is for each and every one of them. Because in many cases, when I started talking, and it's not just for the bank, it's something I experienced throughout my career, when I started talking with the engineering teams, they told me, well, that's not our problem. We're using an API. Great, but especially in the banking industry, I'm the one responsible. We're the ones responsible, and it doesn't matter. We can't just rely on the third party to take care of the security. So definitely getting the inventory and understanding where we're vulnerable is probably priority number one. And William, if we move to the next slide, we'll see you just showed 2 slides ago. You showed the top challenges that OWASP has identified with API security. Now, OWASP is the Open Web Association. I don't even remember their acronyms, but basically what they do is they identify web applications vulnerabilities, and they publish them year after year with a lot of mitigation capability, etc. And they've identified quite a few vulnerabilities that are specific for the API world. And it's so easy for companies, and I see that in a lot of startups as well, that they don't develop things on their own, that they create APIs, and they are not even aware of the fact that, for example, Log4Shell is being used in their company because they haven't implemented it, but one of their APIs have. So when we find a new vulnerability like Log4Shell, which was very significant in the API world, we have to be aware of whether or not it's being used and where it's being used throughout the different connectivity connections that we have.
Yeah. Right,
Oh
and this
yeah,
is what, Yeah,
Yeah, we
the
have
list.
all the list or some of the list of OWASP.
Yes. Yeah, and taking clue from what May was saying, one is definitely it's a challenge to get the inventory itself. Forget about what actually are being passed on from or consumed from a bank or from a B2B market standpoint, like whether it's a PCI data or a PII data that could be going out. We did not really have any handle on it. And then one of the tasks was to also figure out whether these attacks can be protected by design. So, can it be something that we can take care at to a certain extent at the code level or even at the design level? So, we did a small study and looking at, and if you take any typical business processes, it could be as generic as a customer onboarding process or it could be a payment process. So, there are so many API endpoints which are traversed by the business process, and it becomes very hard and unmaintainable to get everything correct at the design. And by keeping it within the business timeline or by keeping it within the bounds of a reasonable cost, it was quite a challenge. And we did some basic metrics to figure out. So if you look at any of, and again, like, no, we are talking about an enormous attack surface here. Since the APIs are developed at a very fast pace, there is also a challenge of maintaining it, managing it, taking care of the versions. So, and we map this to any of the particular business process or a scenario, the attack surface or the threat vector becomes so large. Even if we try and manage it at the gateway level or at the WAF level, where we try and whitelist certain API endpoints or mask certain parameters, and we even did a scenario where we had to encrypt the entire payload of an API, which was counterproductive, because it had its own ramifications in terms of the maintenance, in terms of the system processes, resources. So it becomes really hard and to justify the cost implications when we try and protect the APIs by design or by code. So we need something much more significant, which brings in certain kind of automation. Again, the security teams are always have a challenge, and they're always short staffed. So how do we mitigate this kind of a challenges and still take on the daily load? So this is again another challenge which is also kind of connected to the previous one. I'm sure that many of organizations has a very laborious process or a ceremonial process of doing the testing. So testing is a significant portion. We could very well do VAPT based testings, leveraging some of the tools that are out there in the market to validate the code against any possible threats and attacks. So that's one way. And we always do shift left and then ensure that everything is mapped to the DevOps process. But in spite of doing all this kind of tests, including specialized tests like API contract tests or performance tests or security tests, we always found that, like, no, there is large portions which is unknown, and sometimes it actually misleads us, and we tend to delude ourselves, think that we have put in so many person hours of effort, and hence we have efficiently tested. But when there is a hack or when there is a vulnerability that we come across, that changes the entire perspective. So the idea is here is to ensure that we don't delude ourselves by doing some static tests, because static tests can't really get into the behavioral aspects of the application or the payload. Hence, we need to have a strategy to ensure that there is a way forward plan which actually seamlessly mitigates some of the threats and vulnerabilities. Yeah, May?
Thank you, William. Absolutely, I absolutely agree with what you've mentioned. And I want to tap into something you mentioned in the previous slide regarding the security team. And we're always short staffed. I've been in cybersecurity for about 20 years. I've never felt that I had enough people in my team when I was an analyst, when I was a pre-sale, when I was definitely now that I'm a CISO. So we never have enough people. And also, I think that regarding API security, I think when we look at, and that is a different conversation, but it taps into this one. I think one of the biggest challenges in cybersecurity is the amount of things that we're responsible for. And you can see it in this slide. You see the structure, you see the team. And when we're talking about cybersecurity, we have to make sure that the network is secured and that the interfaces are secured and that people are so aware of all the risks and they're not going to fall victim to social engineering. And we also have to make sure that the applications, whether it's internally developed or externally developed, we have to make sure that all of these are secured. And in many cases, we don't have enough background, enough knowledge inside the team. That's something that I've experienced in different roles, that we didn't have someone responsible for application security, and that can cause a significant problem. And that's something that I've seen again and again, um, with the communication between the security team and the R&D team, because R&D will always try and find the best or the quickest way to implement a specific capability, and that's their role. Obviously, our role as security is to make sure that these connections do not put us in harm's way. And I think that today, with all the different APIs, I think that's probably the biggest challenge. I mentioned the inventory before, and I'm mentioning it again because it's not just the inventory from a management point of view, it's also when my R&D team is looking into a new API and they're deliberating whether to use this one or another one. One of the things that we're trying to do in WEO and I've done before in other places is to have that open discussion to make sure that the R&D team is aware that APIs can be a risk, can be a huge risk for the company. And we need them when they look into different APIs because they can use loads of them. You don't have to use a specific vendor when you do something. I want them to be very aware of the fact that maintaining this security is also our responsibility, especially as a bank, and make sure that this is part of the conversation when we're choosing a new vendor. And that, by the way, it's true for APIs and true for third-party risk management in general, not just APIs. Any sort of third party, any sort of vendor can put us can put us at risk.
Yep. Completely agree with you, May. And one of our challenge was to educate the various teams because everybody thought it's the other person's responsibility or the CISO's responsibility to secure. So a lot of effort was put in order to make sure that people really understand and appreciate some of the challenges. And then we had a kind of a single window to interface with multiple teams so that things doesn't really fall under the things. So quickly moving on, and the way we remediated it again, there were various aspects that we looked at right from the code, the design, and then came up with an elaborate checklist to see what exactly is required. But at a high level, we felt a need for a separate API security solution, which was a kind of paramount because, as I mentioned earlier, we had all the state of the art web application firewalls, API gateways, but still there were a lot of things, mainly related to the business logic attacks and more sophisticated attacks that could be probably provided a resolution by some of these tools. So, looking at a separate product or a tool was a need of the hour. And the next thing is, as a risk or a chief compliance, we wanted to really have a handle on all the data that goes in and goes out, mainly from an API standpoint, which included both the public APIs as well as the third-party APIs or partner APIs. So we were not sure whether like there is any customer data or credit card data that's being sent or any of this, as well as like to prevent the misconfigurations. So the misconfigurations were in most of the scenarios was really about people trying to make a public API private or a private to public, which was a scenario in our case by human error. So these were some of the things, and we really did not have a way to get an inventory or discover all the APIs that were running in our ecosystem. So hence we had to leverage on automated tools to manage threats. And more importantly, the forensic data was a key for us. Like, when there is an attack or when the system learns more about the API behavior, we wanted to understand more of the forensic data, which a tool like an API security could provide, to go back and then relook at the code, make sure that we don't have vulnerabilities that are exposed, and then keep iterating and testing and continuing the whole process end to end. So that's how we try to remediate. May you want to add anything to this, please?
Yes, I think that the biggest thing that I have to add to this is the fact that when we're talking about compliance, and I want to tap into that, when we're talking about compliance to different regulations, that's also a huge problem with API. And I think one of the biggest remediation was to try and map out, first of all the APIs we have, where are they located, what regulations are affected by the different locations, what sort of data we're moving forward, we're producing to other places around the world, and are we even allowed to do that? And that's, by the way, I think that one of the biggest issues in security is working very closely with the legal team, because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know about all the different regulations that are relevant, let's say in the UAE in this case, but they do. That's their job. So I think it's up to us, and I think as security, in many cases, I always feel like a go-between. We're a go-between the technical teams, the IT team, the R&D team, and the business side. If it's the C-level executives, it's legal, it's marketing. So it's our job to sort of be a go-between and mitigate between them. And I think with API, that's something that we definitely should highlight. I think that's definitely an issue.
All right. And again, this is our observations from TechSub standpoint. So once we implemented an API security solution, things were looking better. So we definitely had a handle on the API inventory along with the sensitive parameters. And we were also surprised that like, no, we were actually under attack for some time, and then people tried to exploit some of our shadow APIs which were never published. So we were able to prevent some of the business logic attacks because we saw that APIs were being tampered. And APIs are so easy to tamper, right? Like, no, you just pass on the wild character and it tries to give you all the data from the backend. So we saw some instances of business logic threat, API tampering in the first month of our operations. And but however, the system was able to efficiently manage it, prevent these vulnerabilities, and also by virtue of that, we were able to identify and blacklist some of the rogue IP addresses that were responsible. And we are still working on it and making sure that our API security is foolproof. But there is a handle definitely, and there is an automation that has enabled our team to streamline the monitoring of APIs going forward.
Yeah,
May?
I don't believe in 100% security, but we're trying to get there. One of the things that maybe you've done, William, I know that we're trying to do in WIO and we've done before as well, is educate our technological teams about the vulnerabilities. And you talked about shadow APIs and unauthorized access. And I already mentioned LinkedIn and Clubhouse and Pearl that all had the same problem. It was just misconfiguration. But to be honest, I always say that hackers are like water. They'll find a way to stream through. They'll find the weakest link. Sometimes it will be the end user who will click a link and give them their credentials. In other times, it will be just to scan our entire the entire card and find those unprotected APIs. So I think it's up to us as security leaders to talk to the R&D team. And for me personally, I always start off when working with the R&D. I always say that I'm not a programmer. That's secure their code. So I need them to be aware of the risk. I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. The only thing that I'm trying to point out is where their job meets my job and how can we help each other.
Okay, all right. That's it from our side. So thank you so much. And Shreya, back to you. If there are any questions, we'll be happy to take.
Yeah, sure. Okay, William and May, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on API security. And yeah, um, so there is a question from the audience that they would love to know about your personal experience or any recent experience for the API security or threats that has been happened to any another application. Like in the William, May, please feel free to share your experience.
And I don't think this is a good topic to share in a public forum. Maybe, if question is sent, probably on one basis, because a lot of sensitive information definitely out there. And yes, maybe on one-to-one basis, outside this, we'll be able to take some of them. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, okay, great. And yeah, another question is like the audience wanted to understand how to structure the ORG, like team for the API security, like when they are small team and when they are growing. So how they should approach to the team, or how who will be the first hire for the team for the API security? Any thoughts on that, like from small team to growing team?
May?
Yeah, so I think that for us as a growing business, obviously
Yeah.
we are, I said, we're basically a startup that is also a bank. So when we started off, we didn't have someone designated for API security. We're building the business. Now, there isn't one sort of solution. It really depends. If you're heavily relying on APIs, then it's probably a good idea to have someone in the team that is focused on that is focused on maintaining the inventory, mapping out the risks, the vulnerabilities, understanding exactly what sort of data flows from you to the third party, etc. I think for a more traditional company, you'll probably be okay with someone doing it part time if they have the knowledge, or even using a third party or using a trusted consultant. Now, it also depends if you have an API management tool, security management tool, or not. If you have something that will map out everything and you have everything in place, it's much, well, on the one hand side, it's easier. On the other hand side, ignorance is sometimes bliss. So if you don't know, that's also an approach. That's another to- conversation I had a few days ago. But I think that, again, the more reliant you are on APIs and the more sensitive data you have that you that you stream between yourself and the third parties, the more you should focus on that, and you'll probably need someone full time, maybe even a team. Depends on the scale of the business.
Yeah, just to add to that, Shreya, like the other way to look at it is to improve your API governance. So definitely look at a team where you have someone looking at the API governance, because most of the time, as I said, it's security misconfigurations, which is going to cause two-thirds of the errors or the problems. So someone at the governance level looking at the review process, or looking at how APIs are promoted to the production environment hands free, and then improving. And as well as the third point is educating the team members. I think that's a long way to go.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, nice. And any idea, thoughts on tools, processes for the API security? Like if you are using any tools at your ORG.
Yeah, so there are many tools out there in the market. So one is to know what really fits your organization,
Mm-hmm.
and how easy or difficult it is to adopt, because this tools works in a various kind of a deployment environment. So your organization could be leveraging something on premise, or it could be a hybrid environment, or you could be someone who's born on the cloud, which who does everything on a container. So depending upon that, there are umpteen number of tools that are available in the market, and better ways to get into few of them, do a POC, or even come up with a kind of a map or a matrix to validate some of these tools. So probably that would be a good way forward. May you want to add
And
anything to your
Yeah,
experience?
another point is that from my experience, almost all of these vendors that provide you with the solutions will be more than happy to do a POC with you. Now, I'm not saying waste the time of 10 different vendors, but if you're not sure whether a specific vendor is appropriate for your needs, absolutely do a POC, see the benefit, show it, share it with your risk team, with your compliance team, and make sure that the solution that you choose is technologically and compliant and GRC side sound, and it gives you the benefits that you're looking for. I've done a lot of in different areas. I've done a lot of POCs, and it's always beneficial because it's not just a sales speech. You actually see whether or not it works and whether or not it works on your specific environment.
Okay, okay, nice. And another question is like how people should start with the API security. Like, is there any way in the API development life cycle then when they should think about the API security, like from the beta stage or the general availability? Like, any thoughts on that?
In my eyes, from the second you decide that you want to work with some sort of API, as I mentioned, I think that if our R&D team mostly, or even the product team, is aware of the risks regarding APIs, then it
Okay,
should be part of the conversation when you choose a specific API.
Yeah. Sure.
okay,
In my view, it is like no, not every time you develop an API from scratch, right? Because now we are looking at a API economy where we are trying to consume different APIs, maybe done by a different team or done by a disparate team leveraging a different technology stack altogether. So it becomes difficult until unless you have a view on some of this API and metrics. Of course, I think the hygiene part, which is the normal testing, making sure that we test against some of the worst known issues, or bringing in some kind of a VAPT analysis and trying it to do everything in terms of a DevOps process, that still is valid. But we are looking at a scenario where every day the threat theater is becoming more sophisticated, and people are really doing this now for a living. So it really becomes difficult. So yes, all those things are required and necessary in terms of protecting, but you also need something extra which can give you some more wings or bandwidth to take on the new challenges.
yeah, understood, understood. Thank you, May and William, for the amazing session. It was a quite learning session on the API security. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya.